The Siege of Syracuse, the turning point in the Peloponnesian War. The Peloponnesian War was a fierce conflict that pitted Athens and its allies against Sparta and the Peloponnesian League. After years of stalemate and minor victories on both sides, Athens embarked on an ambitious campaign that it hoped would secure its dominance over the Greek world once and for all. The plan was to capture Syracuse, the powerful city-state on the island of Sicily, whose conquest would give Athens control over valuable resources and a strategic foothold in the western Mediterranean. Yet, the siege of Syracuse would ultimately prove disastrous for Athens, marking a pivotal turning point in the war and setting Athens on a path to its eventual defeat. Part 1. The ambitious plan, the Sicilian expedition. The campaign to capture Syracuse, known as the Sicilian expedition, was proposed by Alcibiades, a charismatic and ambitious Athenian general. He argued that by conquering Syracuse, Athens could gain access to Sicily's wealth, secure valuable grain supplies, and potentially even expand its empire into Italy and beyond. The Athenian assembly, captivated by Alcibiades' vision of glory and empire, approved the plan despite the significant risks involved. The expedition was massive. Athens sent a fleet of over 130 triremes and thousands of soldiers, along with supplies, engineers, and builders, making it one of the largest military endeavors in Greek history. Nicias, an older and more cautious general, opposed the campaign but was appointed as one of the commanders alongside Alcibiades and Lamachus. While the scale of the expedition reflected Athenian ambition, it also represented a considerable gamble. Athens was committing much of its fleet and manpower to a distant and challenging campaign, stretching its resources and leaving itself vulnerable at home. Shortly after the fleet set sail, Alcibiades was recalled to Athens to face charges of sacrilege but fled to Sparta instead. This unexpected defection left Nicias in command, a leader who had opposed the expedition from the start and was hesitant to carry out such an aggressive strategy. Despite this early setback, the Athenian forces pressed on toward Syracuse, unaware of the challenges and obstacles that lay ahead. Part 2. The initial success and growing challenges. Upon their arrival, the Athenians initially found some success. They established a base and began to surround Syracuse, building fortifications to cut off the city from reinforcements. Syracuse, though a powerful city with its own army and navy, was caught off guard by the scale of the Athenian attack. At first, it seemed that Athens might actually achieve its goal. However, the Sicilian campaign was fraught with logistical challenges. The distance between Athens and Sicily made it difficult to maintain supplies, and the unfamiliar terrain made it hard for the Athenian soldiers to maneuver effectively. Additionally, as the siege wore on, diseases began to spread among the Athenian troops, weakening their forces and morale. Back in Athens, support for the campaign began to waver as news of the difficulties reached home. The Athenian assembly, however, decided to send reinforcements under the command of Demosthenes, hoping to turn the tide in favor of Athens. Yet, as the Athenians doubled down on their efforts, Syracuse received aid from Sparta, thanks in part to Alcibiades, who had advised the Spartans to support their fellow Dorians in Syracuse. Alcibiades suggested that a Spartan general, Gylippus, be sent to assist Syracuse, a move that would drastically alter the course of the siege. Part 3. The arrival of Gylippus and the turning of the tide. Gylippus' arrival was a game-changer. A skilled and determined commander, he brought discipline and renewed morale to the Syracusan forces. Under Gylippus' leadership, the Syracusans launched counterattacks, disrupting Athenian efforts to complete their siege fortifications. He also managed to rally the Syracusan allies, strengthening their resistance and reinforcing their defenses. For the first time, the Athenians faced a serious challenge from within Syracuse itself. With Gylippus' arrival, the Syracusans went from being on the defensive to mounting aggressive offensives against the Athenians. They constructed their own counterwall to block the Athenians from completing their siege, and in a series of skirmishes, the Syracusan forces were able to inflict significant losses on the Athenians. The balance of power was shifting, and the Athenian forces, weakened by disease and demoralized by setbacks, found themselves increasingly on the back foot. As winter approached, Nicias pleaded with the Athenian assembly for permission to withdraw, pointing out the poor condition of his troops and the arrival of Spartan reinforcements. The assembly, however, refused to acknowledge the gravity of the situation and instead sent additional reinforcements under Demosthenes, doubling down on the campaign. This decision, driven by Athenian pride and the fear of losing face, only served to deepen Athens' commitment to a campaign that was quickly becoming unsustainable. Part 4. The devastating defeat. When Demosthenes arrived with reinforcements, he quickly realized the grim situation facing the Athenian forces. The soldiers were exhausted, supplies were dwindling, and morale was low. Demosthenes attempted a bold night assault on the Syracusan counterwall, hoping to break the siege quickly. The attack, however, was a disastrous failure. The Athenian forces became disoriented in the dark, and the Syracusans, alerted to the assault, launched a fierce counterattack, inflicting heavy losses on the Athenians. Following this failed assault, Demosthenes advocated for an immediate withdrawal. But Nicias, still hoping for a turnaround, hesitated. His delay proved fatal. The Syracusans and their Spartan allies tightened their defenses and intensified their attacks, effectively trapping the Athenian forces. Finally, recognizing that they could not break the siege, the Athenians prepared to retreat by sea. However, the Syracusans anticipated this move and blocked the harbor, cutting off any escape route. In a final, desperate attempt, the Athenians launched a naval assault to break through the blockade, but the Syracusan fleet, reinforced and emboldened, met them head-on. The Athenians suffered a crushing defeat at sea, and the survivors, trapped on land, were forced to flee into the interior. As the Athenian forces retreated on foot, they were pursued relentlessly by the Syracusan and Spartan forces. Exhausted, starving, and demoralized, the Athenians were hunted down, captured, or killed. The survivors, including both Nicias and Demosthenes, were taken prisoner and later executed or enslaved. The once mighty Athenian expedition had been utterly annihilated. Part 5. The impact on Athens and the turning point in the war. The defeat at Syracuse was catastrophic for Athens. The loss of so many ships, soldiers, and resources dealt a severe blow to the Athenian military and economy. The defeat shattered Athenian morale, and news of the disaster plunged Athens into despair. The city, once confident in its naval supremacy and imperial ambitions, was now vulnerable, with many of its allies considering defection. Athens' enemies, including Sparta and its allies, saw the opportunity to capitalize on the weakened state of the Athenian Empire. Persia, which had been supporting Sparta with financial aid, intensified its backing, enabling Sparta to rebuild and expand its navy. The Athenian treasury, once filled by tributes from allies, was depleted, and the strain of financing the war became increasingly unsustainable. Athens faced growing unrest from within, as citizens who had once supported the Sicilian expedition now blamed their leaders for the costly defeat. The defeat at Syracuse marked a turning point in the Peloponnesian War, as it shifted momentum decisively in Sparta's favor. The Athenian Empire, once dominant, was now vulnerable to attacks and uprisings. Allies who had been under Athenian control began to rebel, emboldened by the news of Syracuse. Sparta, strengthened by Persian support, was able to press its advantage, launching attacks on Athenian-held territories and weakening Athens' control over the Aegean. Part 6. Lessons and the Legacy of the Siege of Syracuse. The Siege of Syracuse highlighted the dangers of overreaching ambition and the perils of underestimating an enemy. For Athens, the Sicilian expedition was supposed to be a demonstration of its imperial power, but it turned into a tragic and costly blunder. The defeat underscored the limits of Athenian naval power, exposing the vulnerability of a city that had become too reliant on its fleet and imperial ambitions. The siege also demonstrated the importance of local support and effective leadership. While Athens underestimated the resolve of Syracuse, the arrival of Gylippus and the unity of the Syracusan people proved decisive. The failure to account for the resilience of the enemy and the willingness of allies to provide support played a critical role in the Athenian defeat.